Did you know that according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, over 70% of individuals struggling with substance use express an active desire to quit, yet less than 10% take the initial step without understanding their brain's readiness signals? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal what neuroscientists and addiction specialists have observed about the subtle psychological shifts that signal you are truly ready to recover. Whether you're questioning your own habits, struggling to break a persistent cycle, or trying to understand a loved one's journey, this information could fundamentally change how you view recovery. Today, we're diving deep into the science of behavioral change using research from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, Harvard Medical School, and the World Health Organization. Before we begin, if you find this evidence-based content helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe. And remember, this video is for educational purposes only. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please seek professional help. Resources and confidential helplines are available in the description below. In this video, you're going to discover: first, we'll explore the cognitive shift from rationalization to awareness and why identifying your triggers matters. Second, I'll break down the neuroscience of motivation and the psychological framework behind behavioral readiness. Third, we'll examine the physical, emotional, and social signs that indicate your brain is primed for change. And finally, I'll share actionable, evidence-based steps to safely transition from wanting to quit to actually taking action. Now, let's establish some context. Behavior reliance and addiction affect over 40 million people in the United States alone, and over 2 million people across the UK. You might be watching this because you're noticing changes in your own routine, you're worried about someone close to you, or you simply want to understand how habit loops operate in the human brain. Whatever brought you here, you are the right place. There's a massive misconception that quitting requires a sudden, dramatic moment of hitting rock bottom. Today, we're cutting through that myth and examining what clinical science actually shows about readiness. So let's start with the foundations of behavioral science. Readiness to quit isn't just an emotion. It is a measurable psychological state. Psychologists James Prochaska and Carlo Dickelman developed what is known as the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, which breaks down how human beings alter chronic habits. To understand why you feel ready to quit, we have to look at what happens in your neural circuits. In your brain, repeated substance use or compulsive behaviors alter the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, often called the reward circuit. Think of your brain like a well-traveled hiking trail. Every time you engage in a habitual behavior, the path gets deeper and smoother. Your prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making and impulse control, gets bypassed by the amygdala and basal ganglia, which drive automatic behaviors. In your body, your nervous system becomes accustomed to functioning under specific conditions. When you start considering quitting, your brain's neuroplasticity, its natural ability to reorganize itself, is beginning to assert itself over automatic routines. When a person moves into the readiness phase, several measurable changes occur. Cognitive dissonance increases. The gap between your personal values and your actual actions becomes uncomfortable. Medical professionals describe this as the primary driver for internal motivation. Exhaustion overcomes euphoria. The brain's tolerance levels mean the behavior no longer provides pleasure, only a temporary relief from discomfort. Shift in focus. You begin spending more mental energy planning an exit strategy than planning your next session. Acceptance of reality. Excuses and rationalizations begin to collapse under the weight of factual outcomes. What most people don't realize is that feeling overwhelmed by your habit isn't a sign of failure. It is actually the brain's baseline returning to a state where logical reasoning can re-emerge. Let's break down the exact signs that indicate you are psychologically and neurologically prepared to make a change. Here is the breakdown of how readiness manifests across your daily life. Sign 1. You've stopped rationalizing and started observing. During early stages of dependency, the prefrontal cortex manufactures excuses: I need this for stress, or I only do this on weekends. Readiness occurs when you look at the habit objectively. A 2023 study published in Neuropsychopharmacology highlighted that self-monitoring without self-deception is the strongest early indicator of successful intervention. Sign 2. The costs clearly outweigh the benefits. Your brain constantly performs a subconscious cost-benefit analysis. Early on, the immediate dopamine spike outweighs long-term consequences. Over months or years, tolerance sets in. When you realize the friction, financial cost, physical toll, and emotional fatigue far exceed the fleeting relief, your brain's decision-making architecture shifts. Sign 3. You are experiencing emotional exhaustion, not just guilt. Guilt is a short-term emotion that often triggers further engagement in the habit as a coping mechanism. Emotional exhaustion, however, is a sustained realization that maintaining the behavior takes more energy than breaking it. Sign 4. You start envisioning a future beyond the habit. When caught in an active dependency loop, your brain operates in short-term survival mode, thinking only hours or days ahead. Readiness shows up when you begin imagining goals 6 months, a year, or 5 years into the future, and realize the habit cannot exist in that future. Sign 5. You're willing to seek support and accept help. Isolation feeds compulsive cycles. The moment you move from keeping secrets to seeking external guidance, whether reading a book, talking to a doctor, or joining a support group, you break the cycle of secrecy that keeps habits alive. Now, let's put dopamine back into perspective. Natural activities, like eating a good meal or exercising, release baseline levels of dopamine. Addictive substances or compulsive behaviors can flood the system with up to 10 times that amount. Over time, your brain reduces its natural receptors to protect itself. This is why quitting feels so intimidating. Your brain temporarily lacks the receptors to process everyday joy. But understanding that this neurochemical state is temporary is the key to pushing through. Let's address what happens when we ignore these readiness signs and continue delaying action. These are documented physiological and psychological facts. Cardiovascular and physical health. Chronic strain from unresolved addictions or high-stress behavioral cycles places continuous pressure on the autonomic nervous system. Prolonged elevation of cortisol and adrenaline leads to increased risks of hypertension, sleep architecture disruption, and weakened immune function. Cognitive and brain structure. Structural MRI studies show that chronic exposure to addictive substances or severe stress loops leads to volume reduction in the prefrontal cortex. This directly impacts working memory, emotional regulation, and executive processing. The good news? Neuroplasticity research demonstrates that brain volume and neural connectivity begin recovering within weeks of abstinence and structured recovery. Mental health impact. Research consistently links prolonged dependency to secondary psychological conditions. Depression. Individuals are significantly more likely to experience major depressive episodes as natural dopamine production stalls. Anxiety disorders. Chronic use dysregulates the GABA system, leading to persistent baseline anxiety. Cognitive fatigue. The constant mental effort of hiding, financing, and managing a habit drains cognitive bandwidth needed for work and creative life. Social and life consequences. Beyond health, delayed action erodes trust in personal relationships. Financial leakages add up. Spending even $15 or 10 pounds a day on a habit totals over $5,000 or 3,600 pounds every single year. It is vital to understand that feeling unprepared does not mean you aren't ready. The human brain naturally fears transition. You do not need to feel 100% confident to take the first step. You simply need to be honest about where you are today. Recovery is not a single leap. It is a series of structured, manageable decisions. So, how do you translate readiness into lasting action? Let's talk about clinical, evidence-based approaches to taking the first step. 1. Secure professional evaluation and medical guidance. Before abruptly stopping any long-standing substance or severe behavior, consult a medical professional. For certain substances Medical supervision during detox is critical for safety and comfort. Doctors can provide pharmacological assistance to dampen cravings and stabilize brain chemistry. 2. Utilize proven behavioral therapies. The gold standard psychological frameworks include cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which remaps the automatic thought patterns and triggers that lead to compulsive urges, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which teaches you to experience cravings without acting on them, and motivational interviewing, which helps solidify your internal core values over temporary desires. 3. Implement environmental controls and harm reduction. Remove immediate access to the habit. Alter your physical environment, block triggering apps or websites, and change daily routes or routines that your brain associates with the behavior. 4. Build your support architecture. Connect with established recovery networks like SAMHSA resources, NHS support groups, or peer-led 12-step and SMART recovery programs. Having accountability removes the burden of doing it entirely alone. Here is a recap of the 5 key takeaways from today's video. 1. Readiness is a measurable psychological state, not just a random emotional impulse. 2. Stopping rationalization is the first true sign that your brain is re-engaging logical reasoning. 3. Tolerance and neurochemical fatigue explain why the habit no longer feels enjoyable. 4. The brain exhibits neuroplasticity, meaning damage to decision-making centers can reverse with time and sobriety. 5. Taking action does not require perfect confidence. It requires utilizing structured, professional support. If you are struggling, please know that reaching out for assistance is an act of profound self-awareness and strength. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up to help spread evidence-based educational content to those who need it. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into neuroscience, psychology, and recovery strategies. I'd like to hear from you. Which of these signs resonated most with your current journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Our community is a respectful, supportive space for everyone. All confidential resources, national helplines for the US and UK, and reference scientific studies are listed in the description box below. In our next video, we will be exploring what happens to your brain during the first 30 days of recovery, detailing the exact neurochemical timeline of healing. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.